He saved her life and was locked up for it. She risked everything to set him free. When heroes fall from the sky. Lieutenant Jake. Morrison gripped the controls of his reconnaissance fighter as warning lights painted the cockpit red.
Ship.
The Meridian had been struck by unknown energy weapons while surveying the outer rim of human space. The attackers had vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving Jake with failing systems and a rapidly approaching unknown planet. "Come on, baby, stay with me," Jake muttered, fighting to keep the ship stable as it entered the atmosphere. Planet below showed signs of civilization, geometric patterns that could only be cities, and what looked like transportation networks spreading across the continents. The crash was inevitable. Jake managed to guide his fighter away from populated areas, finally coming down hard in what appeared to be a forest of towering crystal trees. The impact knocked him unconscious, and when he awoke, smoke was rising from his damaged craft. Jake checked himself for injuries, a few cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. His survival training kicked in as he gathered essential supplies from the wreckage. The planet's air was breathable, gravity slightly lighter than Earth's, and the twin suns overhead cast everything in a warm golden light. A cry for help pierced the alien forest, unmistakably a distress call, though in no language Jake recognized. Following the sound, he discovered a young alien female trapped beneath a fallen crystal tree. Her skin was pale blue with intricate silver markings, and her large amber eyes showed both pain and fear when she saw him. "Easy there," Jake said softly, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I'm here to help." The alien, who appeared roughly humanoid, but with longer limbs and pointed ears, spoke rapidly in her musical language. Jake couldn't understand the words, but her tone was clearly pleading. The massive crystal tree had pinned her legs, and from the way she moved, Jake could tell she was badly hurt. Without hesitation, Jake began examining the situation. The tree was far too heavy for him to lift alone, but he noticed it was balanced precariously on several smaller crystal formations. If he could shift a balance point, working quickly, Jake used his survival tools to create a makeshift lever system. The alien watched him with growing hope, occasionally offering what sounded like encouragement in her language. After 20 minutes of careful work, Jake managed to shift the tree enough for her to pull herself free. She tried to stand but collapsed immediately, her leg clearly broken. Jake caught her before she hit the ground, and in that moment of contact, something unexpected happened. The silver markings on her skin began to glow, and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation where they touched. "Whoa," Jake breathed. But the alien female, who would later tell him her name was Zara, looked at him with wonder rather than fear. In broken but understandable English, she whispered, "You touched me." How? Before Jake could respond, the forest around them erupted with activity. Tall figures in flowing robes emerged from between the crystal trees, their movements fluid and graceful. They spoke in the same musical language as Zara, but their tones were harsh and accusatory. Jake helped Zara to her feet, supporting her. "Wait, friends of yours?" Zara replied. "Council Guard," Zara replied, her amber eyes wide with sudden fear. "They will not understand. On Viridian, touching without permission is forbidden, especially between different species." The guards surrounded them, their weapons elegant, staff-like devices that hummed with energy, trained on Jake. The leader, distinguished by more elaborate robes, spoke in accented English. "Human, you have violated the sacred law of contact. Release the daughter of our world immediately." "I was helping her," Jake protested, tightening his protective grip on Zara. "She was trapped and hurt." "Your intentions are irrelevant," the leader replied coldly. "The law is absolute. Be detained and judged by the High Council." Zara struggled to speak, but the guards silenced her with a gesture. As they bound Jake's hands with energy restraints, he met her amber eyes one last time, the gratitude and something deeper he saw. They made everything worthwhile. "I'd do it again," he told her, as they led him away, and the soft glow of her silver markings suggested she understood more than just his words. When justice becomes injustice, the Viridian Council. Chamber was a magnificent structure of living crystal that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Jake stood in the center, still bound by energy restraints, as the 12 council members took their seats on raised platforms that curved. Around him in a semicircle, the charges were read in both Viridian and English. Violation of the sacred. Law of contact, contamination of a pure bloodline, and potential corruption of their society.
Ow.
Each charge carried the penalty of death. The human will speak in his defense, announced Council Leader Thane, an elderly Viridian whose silver markings had darkened with age, though the evidence of his crime is undeniable. Jake stepped forward, his military training helping him maintain composure despite the gravity of his situation. Honored Council, I understand I broke your law, but I couldn't stand by and watch someone suffer when I had the power to help. Where I come from, we call that basic human decency. Murmurs rippled. Through the chamber, Council Leader Thane raised a hand for silence. Human concepts of morality are irrelevant here. Our laws exist to protect the purity of our species. Contact between Viridians and outsiders has been forbidden for over 1,000 years. But why? Jake asked, genuinely puzzled.
What happened?
To make you so afraid of contact? The question seemed to strike a nerve. Several council members exchanged glances before Thane spoke again. Long ago, our ancestors welcomed visitors from the stars. We shared our knowledge, our culture, our very essence. In return, we were betrayed. Species we trusted attempted to steal our most sacred secret, the source of our marking's power. Jake looked around the chamber, noticing how the crystal walls seemed to respond to the Viridian's emotions, growing brighter or dimmer. So you isolated yourselves because of one betrayal? It's not just any betrayal, said Council Member Vera, a younger Viridian with particularly bright markings.
They
Tried to harvest our life force itself. The markings you see are not mere decoration. They are conduits to the planet's energy. When pure bloodlines are contaminated through contact, that connection weakens. The pieces began falling into place for Jake. That's why Zara's markings glowed when I touched her. But she seemed stronger afterward, not weaker. Stunned silence fell over the chamber. Council Leader Thane leaned forward. Constable. No outsider has ever strengthened our connection to Viridian. The historical records are clear. Maybe your records are wrong, Jake said. Or maybe humans are different from whoever betrayed you before. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Zara entered, walking without assistance, despite her recent injury. Her silver markings blazed with light brighter than anyone had ever seen, and the crystal walls resonated with harmonic frequencies. The human speaks truth, she announced, her voice carrying an authority that made even the council members sit straighter. His touch did not weaken me, it awakened, something that has been dormant in our people for generations. Council Leader Thane rose from his seat. Zara, daughter of the healing arts, you should not be here. The contamination must be cleansed from your system. There is no contamination, Zara replied firmly, only rediscovered potential. Long, we have lived in fear of what we lost. But perhaps it is time to remember what we might gain. She approached Jake, and despite the gasps from the council, she placed her hand on his arm. The moment they touched, both their forms were surrounded by a brilliant aura of silver and gold light. The crystal chamber itself began to sing harmonics, building to a crescendo that filled every heart with wonder. The ancient prophecies speak of a time when the children of distant stars would return to heal the wounds of old betrayals, Zara said, her voice now carrying the resonance of the chamber itself. Perhaps that time has come. Council Member Vera stood up. If this is true, then our entire legal system, our whole way of life, would need to change, Thane finished quietly. But the law is the law, even if the human's touch has had its unusual effects. The sacred law of contact cannot be broken without consequences. Jake felt his heart sink. Even with this new evidence, it seemed the council was to set in their ways to change. But Zara stepped forward, her markings now pulsing with determined light. Then I invoke the right of shared fate, she declared. As one who has been touched by the accused, I claim the right to share his judgment. If he dies, I die with him. The declaration sent shockwaves through the chamber. The right of shared fate was ancient, rarely invoked, and binding. If Zara chose to link her fate with Jake's, the council would have to execute one of their own. People to carry out the sentence. Council leader Thane's expression was grim. Zara, you cannot be serious. You would throw away your life for this outsider. I would throw away my life for justice, she replied, and for the chance that our people might remember what we were meant to be. When love defies law, the council chamber fell silent as the weight of Zara's declaration settled over everyone present. The right of shared fate was sacred law, older than the prohibition against contact, and even council leader Thane could not dismiss it lightly. The council requires time to deliberate, Thane announced after a long pause. The human and Zara will be held in separate containment until we reach a decision. As the guards moved to escort them away, Jake caught Zara's amber eyes. The connection between them had grown stronger since their first touch, and he could almost feel her thoughts. There was determination there, and something else, a plan. The holding cells were carved from the same living crystal as the rest of the city. But these crystals were dark and cold. Jake paced his small confinement, his mind racing. The situation was impossible. Zara was willing to die for him, but he couldn't let that happen. There had to be another way. Hours passed before Jake heard the soft chime that meant someone was approaching. He expected to see guards, but instead, a figure in a maintenance worker's robe slipped through the energy barrier. Zara, Jake whispered, recognizing her amber eyes beneath the hood. We do not have much time, she said, quickly working at it. Device on her wrist. The council will vote at dawn, and there are too many who fear change. They will choose death over the possibility of being wrong. How did you get out? It's the same way you are getting out, she replied, as Jake's cell barrier flickered and died. My father designed these containment systems. He also taught me how to bypass them. Jake followed her through corridors he hadn't seen before, maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the main city. Your father won't be happy about this. Zara's markings dimmed slightly. My father is council member Vera. She voted to delay the execution because she sensed the truth in what happened between us. But even she cannot overcome 1,000 years of fear. They emerged into a transport bay where a small, sleek vessel waited. Where are we going? It's the Forbidden Archive, Zara said as she powered up the craft. If we can find proof that the old prophecies are true, that contact with other species was always meant to be part of our destiny. Perhaps we can change enough minds to save both our lives. Transport lifted off silently using stealth systems that Jake had never seen before. As they flew through the night, the city below sparkled like a jewel made of living light. It was beautiful, but Jake could see the isolation in its design. Walls and barriers everywhere. A civilization that had turned inward. The archive is in the northern wastes, Zara explained as they flew. It was sealed after the Great Betrayal, but some of the old knowledge remains. My grandmother used to tell stories about it before the council made such tales illegal. They'd been flying for an hour when the pursuit began. Jake spotted the lights first, a formation of council security vessels closing in from behind. We've got company. Zara's hands flew over the controls and their transport suddenly accelerated to incredible speeds. But the pursuing craft were faster, and within minutes they were surrounded. Zara, daughter of Vera, you will return to the city immediately, came the voice of Captain Dex, the council's chief enforcer. Your rebellion ends now. My rebellion is just beginning, Zara replied, and Jake saw her markings flare with defiant light. She dove their transport toward the ground, weaving between towering crystal formations in a display of piloting skill that left Jake breathless. The pursuit continued through a maze of canyons and crystal forests, using every advantage to stay ahead of the larger security vessels, but Jake could see they were running out of options. There Zara pointed to a structure in the distance, ancient and overgrown, but clearly artificial. The archive. If we can reach it, the old defenses might still be active. They made a desperate run for the structure, with security vessels closing in from all sides. Energy weapons lit up the night sky as Captain Dex's forces tried to disable their transport without destroying it entirely. Hold on, Zara warned, and Jake gripped his seat as she executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible. The transport skimmed the ground, dodged between crystal pillars, and finally dove into a concealed opening in the archive's base. They crashed in a chamber. Filled with dust and ancient machinery, their transport badly damaged, but still functional. Outside, Jake could hear the security forces taking positions around the archive. "You are surrounded," Captain Dex's voice echoed through the structure. "Surrender now, and your punishment will be swift." Zara activated emergency lighting, revealing a vast chamber filled with crystalline data storage devices. "The knowledge of our ancestors is all here," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Everything they knew about the universe, about other species, about our true destiny." Jake helped her to one of the central consoles, which flickered to life at her touch. The silver markings on her skin began to glow as she interfaced with the ancient system. Here, she breathed, and holographic displays filled the air around them. The prophecy of the start touched. It speaks of a time when visitors from distant worlds would come not to take but to give, to awaken the sleeping power within our people. The images showed Viridians working alongside other species, their markings blazing with shared energy. It was everything the modern council had rejected, but clearly what their ancestors had believed was possible. "We need to get this information back to the city," Jake said, but explosions outside told him their time was running out. "The transmission array," Zara said, pointing to another console. "If we can activate it, we can broadcast this to every crystal in the city. Everyone will see the truth." But as they worked to activate the ancient systems, the archive's defenses began to fail. Captain Dex's forces were breaking through. When truth becomes weapon, the ancient transmission array hummed to life as Zara's markings blazed with desperate energy. Round them. The archive's defenses crackled and sparked as Captain Dex's forces systematically destroyed the outer barriers. "How long do we need?" Jake asked, watching the holographic displays that showed the security forces advancing through the archive's outer chambers. "The system is old," Zara replied, her hands dancing over crystals that responded to her touch. "But if I can establish a connection to the city's main crystal network, everyone will see what we've discovered." An explosion rocked the chamber, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Jake positioned himself between Zara and the entrance, knowing that when the security forces broke through, he'd be their first target. "Got it," Zara announced, and suddenly the air filled with swirling holographic images. The prophecy of the Start Hutched began broadcasting across the city, showing ancient Viridians working in harmony with dozens of other species. Jake watched in awe as the images revealed a civilization far more advanced than the current. Cities that spanned star systems, technology that seemed to blend science and art, and most importantly, Viridians whose markings blazed with power that came from connection rather than isolation. "The great betrayal," Zara said, her voice carrying the weight of discovery. "It wasn't what the council taught us. Look." The holographic record showed the truth. The species that had betrayed the Viridians hadn't been welcomed visitors. They had been invaders, conquerors, who had manipulated the peaceful nature of Viridian society. The isolation that followed had been meant as a temporary protection, not a permanent way of life. "We were supposed to emerge from isolation when the Star Touched came," Zara breathed. "The prophecy says they would be recognized by their ability to strengthen our connection to the planet's energy, not weaken it." Another explosion closer this time. Jake could hear boots on crystal floors, weapons charging. "Zara, we need to go." "Not yet," she said, her markings now blazing so brightly they lit the entire chamber. "I need to send all of this to the council, to my mother, to anyone who will listen." The chamber's entrance exploded inward, and Captain Dex strode through, with a squad of heavily armed guards. His own markings were dim with anger and disappointment. "Zara, you have gone too far," he said, his weapon trained on Jake. "Step away from the human, and perhaps the council will show mercy." "The council has been wrong for 1,000 years, Zara replied, not moving from the console. "And I can prove it," Nuff Captain Dex barked. "The human dies now, and you will return to face judgment." But as he raised his weapon, something extraordinary happened. The transmission Zara had been sending reached the city's main crystal network, and every screen, every communication device, every crystal window began showing the ancient prophecies. Jake watched Captain Dex's expression change as the truth of their history unfolded before his eyes. The guard captain's markings began to glow brighter, responding to the revelation of what his people had once been. This... This cannot be real, Captain Dex whispered, but his weapon lowered slightly. It is real, Zara said, stepping forward. We were meant to be explorers, diplomats, bridges between worlds. The isolation was only meant to last until the start touch came to help us heal. One of the guards, a young Viridian named Kale, stepped forward. Captain, my markings. They're responding to the human's presence, just like in the prophecy. Jake looked around and realized it was true. Every Viridian in the chamber was beginning to glow more brightly. The effect was spreading, and he could feel something awakening in the planet's very core. The resonance cascade, Zara said in wonder. The ancient texts describe it. When the start touched finally arrived, the planet itself would respond. Outside the archive, the crystal forests began to sing with harmonics that hadn't been heard for a millennium. The lights were visible from space as Viridian's entire crystal network awakened to its full potential. Captain Dex's communicator crackled. To life. Captain, this is Council Leader Thane. The city is... changing. The crystals are singing, and our people are reporting abilities they've never had before. What is happening at the archive? Jake stepped forward, his hands raised, but his voice steady. What's happening is that your people are remembering who they were meant to be. The isolation was a scar, not a natural state. You were meant to be part of something bigger. The transmission shows ancient star maps, Zara added, her voice carrying. New authority, trade routes, diplomatic protocols, even marriage ceremonies between species. We were part of a galactic community. Captain Dex looked at his glowing markings, then at his men, all of whom were experiencing the same awakening. If this is true, if we have been wrong, then we've wasted 1,000 years, said a new voice. Councilmember Vera entered the chamber, her own markings blazing with maternal concern and growing understanding. Zara, my daughter, what have you discovered? The reunion between mother and daughter was brief but profound. Vera studied the holographic displays, her expression shifting from concern to amazement to something like grief. The council is in emergency session, she said. Half demand immediate execution of the human, but the other half are seeing what we see here. The planet itself is responding to his presence. It's not just me, Jake said. The prophecy suggests that humans, my people, were meant to be the start touched. We're supposed to help you reconnect with the rest of the galaxy. Thunder echoed across the landscape as more council security forces arrived at the archive. But now, Jake could see division in their ranks. Some were following orders, while others were questioning everything they'd been taught. The vote, Vera said urgently. It's happening now. If we can get this evidence to the council chamber. Already? Done, Zara smiled, her markings pulsing with satisfaction. Every crystal in the city is broadcasting the truth. The council can't ignore what their own people are experiencing. But as they prepared to leave the archive, Jake realized their biggest challenge was just beginning. 1,000 years of isolation, and fear couldn't be overcome in a single night. And there were those who would fight to maintain the old ways, no matter what the cost. When worlds unite, the council chamber buzzed with unprecedented energy as Jake and Zara were escorted inside. The living crystal walls pulsed with light that seemed to respond to the emotions of everyone present, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that painted the ancient chamber in hues never before seen. Half the council members sat with markings blazing bright with newfound understanding, while the other half maintained the dim traditional glow of isolation. The division was stark, visible, and dangerous. Council Leader Thane stood before the assembly, his own markings flickering between bright and dim as he struggled with the weight of decision. We have seen the ancient records. We have felt the planet's response to the human's presence. But we must not let emotion override centuries of wisdom. Wisdom? Council member Vera stood, her voice carrying the authority of a mother protecting her child. Is it wisdom to deny the evidence before our eyes? Look around you, Thane. The crystals sing. Our people report abilities beyond anything we've known. The planet itself welcomes this human. Jake felt the weight of thousands of years, of history pressing down on him. In the gallery above, hundreds of Viridians watched, their markings creating a sea of light that ebbed and flowed with the tension in the chamber. The law exists for a reason, declared Council Member Brax, one of the traditionalists. Great betrayal nearly destroyed our civilization. Would you have us risk everything for the words of an outsider? I would have us risk everything for the truth, Zara replied, stepping forward. Her markings were now so bright, they cast shadows on the crystal floor. The archives don't lie. We were never meant to live in isolation. We were meant to be bridges between worlds. Council Leader Thane raised his hand for silence. The evidence is ... compelling, but evidence of what once was does not guarantee what should be. Human, you have caused upheaval in our world. What do you say for yourself? Jake looked around the chamber, seeing fear and hope warring in equal measure. He thought of his crashed ship, of the mission that had brought him here, of the people back on Earth who had no idea their actions might reshape an entire civilization. I say that fear is a prison we build for ourselves, Jake replied. Your ancestors weren't wrong to trust other species. They were betrayed by conquerors, not by friends. My people humans, we're not perfect, but we believe in helping others. We explore not to conquer, but to understand. He gestured to Zara, whose markings pulsed in rhythm with his words. When I found her trapped, I didn't think about laws or consequences. I saw someone who needed help, and I helped. That's what humans do. It's what your ancestors did before fear made them forget. A young Viridian in the gallery suddenly stood up. The human speaks truth. Hey, my grandfather worked in the crystal mines, and he always said the stones sang differently when he was happy. Now they sing like never before. Others began to stand, sharing their own experiences. The planet's response to Jake's presence was affecting everyone, awakening abilities and perceptions that had been dormant for generations. Enough, Council. Member Brax declared. Personal experiences cannot override law. The vote must be called. But before anyone could respond, the chamber's great doors burst open. Captain Dex strode in, his armor gleaming and his markings blazing with purpose. Council Leader Thane, he announced. I bring urgent news from the orbital stations. Ships approach our world, dozens of them, representing multiple species. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Council Leader Thane stood, his face grave. Are we under attack? No, sir, Captain Dex replied. They come in response to the crystal resonance. The planet's awakening was detected across the sector. They request permission to land, claiming they are ... delegates. Jake felt his heart race. The resonance cascade had been detected by other species, just as the ancient prophecies suggested. The universe was responding to Viridian's awakening. This is what the archives predicted, Zara said, her voice carrying new authority. The Star-Touched would come first, followed by the return of the old alliances. The galaxy has been waiting for us to remember who we were meant to be. Council Leader Thane looked older than his years as he processed this information. If we allow them to land, if we open our world again, we become what we were always. Meant to be finished. Not conquerors or victims, but partners in something greater than ourselves. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. 6 council members voted to maintain isolation and execute Jake as planned. 8. But 6 others voted to embrace the new reality, to open their world to the returning delegates. The deciding vote came from Council Leader Thane himself. He stood slowly, his markings cycling through every color Jake had ever seen, on a Viridian's skin. I have led this council for 30 years, he said quietly. I have maintained our isolation, protected our people, preserved our way of life. But I have also seen fear become a cage, and tradition become a chain. He looked directly at Jake, then at Zara, whose hand had somehow found its way into the humans. The planet has chosen, the people have chosen, and perhaps it is time for wisdom to choose as well. His markings blazed suddenly bright, I vote to welcome the delegates. To open our world once more. To thank the start touched for reminding us who we were meant to be. The chamber erupted in light as every crystal surface sang in harmony. Outside, the twin suns seemed to shine brighter as Viridian prepared to rejoin the galactic community. Jake squeezed Zara's hand as they watched. The first ships land outside the city. Humans, yes, but also species he'd never seen before. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and Viridian was ready to explore them all. "So what happens now?" he asked. Zara smiled. Her markings settled into a warm, steady glow. "Now we become what we were always meant to be, partners, explorers, bridges between worlds." As the great doors of the chamber opened to welcome the delegates, Jake realized that sometimes the greatest heroism isn't in fighting or conquering, but in simply being willing to help when help is needed. He had saved one life, and in doing so, had helped save an entire civilization from the prison of its own fear. The universe was vast, but it was also full of friends waiting to be discovered. And Viridian, after 1,000 years of isolation, was finally ready to find them.